What if I could present you a story that you would remember with your entire body and not just with your mind? My whole life as a journalist, I've really been compelled to try to make stories that can make a difference and maybe inspire people to care. I've worked in print, I've worked in documentary, I've worked in broadcast, but it really wasn't until I got involved with virtual reality that I started seeing these really intense, authentic reactions from people that really blew my mind. So the deal is that with VR, virtual reality, I can put you on scene in the middle of the story. By putting on these goggles, right, that track wherever you look, you get this whole body sensation, like you're actually like there. So 5 years ago is about when I really began to push the envelope with using virtual reality and journalism together. And I wanted to do a piece about hunger. Families in America are going hungry, food banks are overwhelmed, and they're often running out of food. Now, I knew I couldn't make people feel hungry, but maybe I could figure out a way to get them to feel something physical. So, again, this was 5 years ago. So doing journalism and virtual reality together was considered a worse than half-baked idea, and I had no funding. Believe me, I had a lot of colleagues laughing at me. And I did, though, have a really great intern, a woman named Michaela Kopsa-Mark. And together we went out to food banks and started recording audio and photographs. Until one day, she came back to my office and she was bawling. She was just crying. She'd been on scene at a long line where the woman running the line was feeling extremely overwhelmed. And she was screaming, you know, there's too many people. There's too many people. And this man with diabetes doesn't get food in time. His blood sugar drops too low, and he collapses into a coma. As soon as I heard that audio, I knew that this would be the kind of evocative piece that could really describe what was going on at food banks. So here's the real line. You can see how long it was, right? And again, as I said, we didn't have very much funding, so I had to reproduce it with virtual humans that were donated, and people beg and borrow favors to help me create the models and make things as accurate as we could. And then we tried to convey what happened that day with as much accuracy as was possible.
There's too many people. There's too many people. Somebody
Okay, he's having a seizure. Okay.
Need help. Yeah, we need an ambulance, somebody.
So the man on the right, for him, he's walking around the body, right? For him, he's in the room with that body. Like that guy is at his feet. And even though with peripheral vision, he can see that he's in this lab space, right? He should be able to see that he's not actually on the street. But he feels like he's there with those people. Very cautious not to step on this guy who isn't really there, right? So that piece ended up going to Sundance in 2012, a kind of amazing thing. And it was the first virtual reality film ever, basically. And when we went, I was really terrified. I didn't really know how people were going to react and what was going to happen. And we showed up with these like duct tape pair of goggles.
Oh, you're crying. You're crying. Gina, you're crying.
So you can hear the surprise in my voice, right? And this kind of reaction ended up being the kind of reaction we saw over and over and over. People down on the ground trying to comfort the seizure victim, trying to whisper something into his ear or in some way, you know, help, even though they couldn't. And I had a lot of people come out of that piece saying, oh my God, I was so frustrated, I couldn't help the guy, and take that back into their lives. So after this piece was made, the dean of the cinema school at USC, at the University of Southern California, brought in the head of the World Economic Forum to try hunger. And he took off the goggles and he commissioned a piece about Syria on the spot. And I really wanted to do something about Syrian refugee kids because children have been the worst affected by the Syrian civil war. I sent a team to the border of Iraq to record material at refugee camps, basically in an area I wouldn't send a team now, as that's where ISIS is really operating. And then we also recreated a street scene in which a young girl is singing and a bomb goes off. Now, when you're in the middle of that scene and you hear those sounds and you see the injured around you, it's an incredibly scary and real feeling. I've had individuals who've been involved in real bombings tell me that it evokes the same kind of fear. We were then invited to take the piece to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And it wasn't advertised, and we were put in this tapestry room. There was no press about it, so anybody who happened to walk into the museum to visit it that day would see us with these crazy lights. You know, maybe they wanted to see the old storytelling of the tapestries, and they were confronted by our virtual reality cameras. But a lot of people tried it, and over a 5-day run, we ended up